I'm getting great questions from viewers and fans, and I'm noticing a trend in some of the questions. And the trend is to ask a question that really indicates that you might be ignoring or just arguing with reality, like just have a preference that's not being met, and looking for a way for me to change your reality. And hopefully you know me by now. I'm gonna work for a way to grow you. I have a great question from someone who wants to be anonymous in Illinois. And it just simply asks, do you have any tips on helping keep employees in their own lane? Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with my concept of stay in your own lane, I wanna just fill you in first, and then I'll get to some great tips on helping our employees stay in their own lane. So, most of my work in leadership and working with employees in this world is twofold. I help people understand how their mind works and do a lot of work with them to help them understand when their ego is playing them and how to eliminate emotional waste by using good mental processes. I think that's the role of leadership. I also help people understand how the world works. Because if you can understand how the world works and stop arguing with reality, you'll conserve all that energy. And if you understand how your mind works, you'll understand how your view gets distorted, and you can move through the life skillfully and happily. So I have a concept that I call the 3 lanes. And if you imagine there's 3 lanes in life, lane number 1 is your lane. That's where you can have the most impact. That is where most of us don't step into the power we already have. We play small, we get under-responsible for our lane and over-responsible for lanes that we really don't have control over. They're usually unmanageables in our life. So lane 1, my business. Lane 2, other people's business. For step parents, this could be not your children. This could be how your spouse chooses to move through life. This could be like anything you're mad about. There's an explanation for it because it's not your business. So there's lane 1, my business. Lane 2, other people's business. And lane 3 is really reality, or if you're a spiritual person, whatever your view of God's business is. So 3 lanes. My business, your business, reality's business. Now, quick way to get stressed. If you want stress in your life, get out of your lane. It's absolutely a sure way to get unhappy. Whenever you're feeling unhappy, my best advice to you is check yourself and get back in your lane. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ever leave and make a difference in the world or help people. But if you're gonna leave your lane, you gotta go out helping, not judging. I can't leave my lane and judge you and tell you what I think you should do in your job unless I have informed consent, unless I'm your manager who is needing to do your review of performance. But most of the time, we're not that. So if I'm in my lane, my job is to, anytime I'm suffering and I'm in my lane, check my skill set. Have I modernized my skill set lately? Am I trying to do a new reality in the old skill set? That's my lane. Update your skills. My lane, am I suffering? Check my approach. Am I using a less than modern approach in the new reality? Modernize my approach. And if I'm suffering in my own lane, I'm not in anybody else's lane, check my willingness. Am I willing to do what it takes to get the results I need? So lane 1, amazing things that can be done in lane 1. This is where you can make your impact. This is where you can succeed in spite of challenges. This is where, in spite of a perfect reality, you can do great things. You can engage, you can have impact. And if you're truly in your lane and suffering, skill set, approach, or willingness, all is fixable. Now, if you get into lane 2, other people's business, you can't go out there judging. You gotta go out there helping or by invitation or informed consent. So as permission-based, hey, I've noticed you're struggling with this. How open are you for me to giving you some ideas that I have that help me do the work differently? The tentativeness, but the main boundary is it's not your business. Lane 3, reality, right? You want to impact that? The best way to impact that is to get super responsible for your lane and then role model the change you want to see in the world and come up with open, inclusive, dialogue that can build solutions far beyond who you are and your ego preferences. So when you're moving out in the world, you're moving as one good data point in the big crowdsource back to your skill set. So a lot of times, these 3 lanes, if you're a leader practicing my work and you have an employee suffering, you can see immediately the source of their suffering. But great leaders don't tell people, they get people thinking. The power of a leader isn't what you tell them, it's what you get them thinking about. Telling them what they need to do is just punch that ego in the face. Self-reflection bypasses this. So my tips for getting employees to be back in their lane is a lot about self-reflection. 1, your job as a leader, explain the lanes. It might be a good mental process that people have never heard of and they don't realize. That in itself might just eliminate some of the waste, where you build common language and you go, whose lane are you in? And are you there by permission? And are you there non-judgmentally? And are you trying to be inclusive or just impose your will? Do you have any business being out of your lane? And if you're out of your lane, are you doing it in ways that build collaboration rather than kill collaboration? Here's some assignments for self-reflection. After I help people understand if they're out of their lane, I just ask them, are you in your lane, or what lane are you in? And if so, are you doing this with permission and good intent? Secondly, I do a lot of getting people back in their lane through self-reflection by saying, well, I hear what you're judging about this situation. Let's get self-reflective and accountable, because that leads to happiness. What's your part in this situation? What is something you could do to have impact? How could you help? All those questions I ask you, whether you know for sure that I teach you about self-reflection, they work here. A couple more assignments and tips. If someone really is out of their lane, I say, you know what advice do you have for other people? And write it down, get very specific, make pages of what you would rather they did instead. Very specific, how you want them to think, how you want them to act, how you want them to feel. And after that assignment, I have them go away and do that, work on it a couple of weeks. They come back to me and I say, so the first step now that you've identified what is most helpful in the world is for you to go first. If you think it's so easy, you go first. Take every bit of this advice, and I want you to work on living it for the next 6 months and see if we still need to work on the rest of the world. And I guarantee you, when you're living the advice you have for others, you will find that others need a lot less advice. So I love that assignment. And another thing I work with people on is when they believe that other people are being wasteful, I try and help them quantify the waste they're bringing to the table. Most of what we're judging people on, right, is diversion, projection. We judge people for doing the same thing we're doing. Our crime's often bigger because we're the ones that can control our own behavior. I had a situation once where I had a very talented employee come to me to let me know that she had been observing a new employee who, in her opinion, was stealing from the organization. And she came in, her name was Tammy, and she said, you know what, the new person is stealing from the organization. And I said, tell me more. And she said, well, she comes in at different times in the morning, but she always writes down on the timesheet that she was here at 8. It's back in the old days, we actually wrote our time in. And I said, oh my gosh, so we have a new employee who is late. I'm just wondering what you did to help them. Have you talked to them about construction, parking, how to be more efficient in getting their area set up? Have you offered to reach out to them? What have you done to help? And her face kind of went blank. She'd been too busy judging. She had done no helping. However, we still have an issue. And so I wanted this to go a different direction. I wanted her to get some insight on maybe what her part in this was. And so I asked her what her part in this was, and she didn't identify that. So we had a couple dead ends. Now in the back of my head, I'm still thinking I need to talk to somebody about their dishonesty. But the point is you coach the person in front of you and tend to the details later. So I said, well, let's do something different. Can you just explore for me the time you've given this? How do you know when she comes in every day and what she writes down? And she said, well, I watch for her to come in, and I keep a list of that. And then once a week when I do the time cards, I look at, before I turn into you, what she wrote down. And I said, well, you have time written down for every day. You were at a conference last week. She goes, oh, well, when I'm gone, I have other people watching her for when she comes in. And I said, well, how much time do you think you spend on this? And we added it up, and sure enough, it was hours of hers and other people watching this person for when they came in and what they put on their timesheet. Now, if it was true that the employee was stealing from the organization, it was like 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. Still something to be addressed. Don't let your mind go there. My best employee, hour a day, 2 hours a day. If you added everybody in, sometimes 3 hours a day. Whose crime is bigger? Somebody maybe was stealing potentially $100 from the organization, and somebody else was commissioning hundreds of dollars for the organization. But they felt so right and so justified because what the employee was doing perhaps was a crime that it never dawned on her what her price of drama was. And so as we just built in what's the new employee's time that she's taking from the organization, what's your time that you're taking from the organization, whose crime is bigger, it dawned on my wonderful, great performing employee, toggle switch working. She just happened to be toggled down, she toggled right back up, and she goes, oh my gosh, she may take 5 minutes, which is not okay from the organization, but I, in effect, am taking sometimes hours from the organization. My crime's bigger. Let me get back to fixing my stuff. Because if what I say is that I value integrity and not stealing from the organization, I'm going to live that first. Self-reflection is how you help people stay in their lane. Introduce the concept, help them understand the language, and then through questions for self-reflection and assignments for self-reflection, help them continue to center in on whether they're in their lane or not and what they could do next that would be most helpful and lead to their happiness at work and home. I hope that helps. Great question.